Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and the iPhone lineup for 2024 includes 8 different phones. These phones that I'm showing in this video, some have been removed from last year, some have been added this year with the iPhone 15 models, but all of them you'll find on Apple.com or in the Apple retail stores if you were to visit one. There are other options that Apple sells, but they don't sell them directly through their own store. You'll have to find them through third-party retailers. And starting on the left, we have the iPhone SE. The iPhone SE has been around for a little while, hasn't been updated for some time. Apple kept around the iPhone 13, also the iPhone 14 and 14 Plus, which actually replaced the iPhone 13 mini that time. So last year they got rid of the mini. We also have the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus, which actually adds some nice new colors, which are more of a pastel color or a matte finish on the back. And then with the Pro models, we actually have some new colors as well in titanium. So we have a bunch of different options here from $429 to $1599, like I mentioned, with many different options with the cameras and more. If we take a look at the left side of all of the phones, basically from the iPhone SE all the way up to the 15 Plus, all of these are built out of aluminum or aluminium with a glass front and back. Like I mentioned before, we have a matte back, which is really nice. The texture is great on the 15 and 15 Plus, and they've rounded the corners over to the edges, where before they were a little bit more squared off with the 14 models that we had all the way back to the iPhone 12. With the new models, with the Pro models, we now have titanium. We have titanium on the outside, which makes them a bit lighter, so they're not as heavy as last year, and some of these are very similar in weight. Apple added USB-C on all of the iPhone 15s this year, but the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max have USB 3.1 speeds, where the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus actually still have USB 2 speeds, much slower, more like Lightning. We also have an action button on the 15 Pro and Pro Max with the new design this year, which allows us to customize this, whether it's for a flashlight or within the menu we have some options for the action button. Everything from flashlight to translate and more. You can use shortcuts with it, and maybe we'll get some more options with it in the future, but that's something they've added this year. Again, it's rounded to the outside edges, back to the glass, and of course the Pro models have 3 cameras instead of 2. We'll take a closer look at that a little bit later. Also this time, we still don't have a SIM card tray. So if you need a SIM card tray in the United States, the 15 models and the 14 actually lack that option. However, if we go back to the iPhone 13, we still have a SIM card tray along with the iPhone SE. You have the option for SIM cards, so that's something you may want to consider, or you can pick these up outside the USA where you can pick it up with a SIM card tray as well, just not in the USA. When it comes to the display, the iPhone SE is the only one that actually has an LCD display. All of the others are OLED displays, and there's some big differences between all of them. If we flip all of these phones back around here, many of these have OLED displays. Some of them exhibit more PWM or pulse width modulation that controls brightness by flickering the display faster or slower. All of them do that, but the 15 Pro and Pro Max actually are less severe with that, where they won't bother your eyes as much, typically above about 39% brightness. They switch to basically what seems to be DC dimming, as the overall rate is much faster. So when you're actually using this, it's less strain on your eyes, and it's easier to use with the Pro models. You can see that at 240 frames per second across all of them, and it gives you an idea of what it actually looks like. While we have LCD with the iPhone SE, the iPhone 13, 14, and 14 Plus all have great OLED displays. However, once you get to the iPhone 15 models, they now go up to 2000 nits of brightness. All of them go that bright, 1600 nits in HDR. They just look great overall. However, with the Pro and Pro Max phones, they actually have an always-on display. So we can turn the display off, it still shows the time, it can show the wallpaper if you choose to do that, and it also works great with standby mode if it's on a charger. So if you're using it on a charger, you can rotate it to landscape and then actually display what you want all day long. If you want that as an option, it's available, but it's something that is only on the 15 Pro and Pro Max to stay on all the time. You need that always-on display for that. Also, we have ProMotion. Apple had this last year, but also on the Pro phones. They're just super smooth when you scroll up and down. If I compare it with maybe even the 15 Plus that doesn't have Pro Motion, you can see at 240 frames per second as I'm scrolling, there's definitely a difference here. You'll see it's a little bit slower on one than the other, and it's definitely noticeable. When you're using it regularly, if you've never used 120 Hertz before, it won't be that big of an issue if you were going to the 15 Plus, but if you have used it and you try to go back, that's where you notice the biggest difference. So you probably don't want to do that. But either way, these don't have it. But you may have already noticed that all of the iPhone 15 models this year have the dynamic island. So if we press play, swipe home, it goes to the dynamic island. Go into the clock, maybe start a timer, swipe home. It also goes to the dynamic island. Those are features that are not on the other phones. It's just sort of a nice way to have notifications here. If you want to pause a timer, get rid of it, you can do that. And then press and hold opens up a separate menu, tap on it, and you go directly into the app itself. It's great for different apps such as Flighty, and some others are just starting to utilize it, such as Uber and more. So it's great to have. I wouldn't run out and buy one for the dynamic island, but it's definitely a feature that I really like. As far as the overall specs, they all have at least an A15 Bionic. So A15 Bionic, then A16 Bionic, and then A17 Pro processor. All of them are super fast, so if I swipe all the way over to the edges here, you'll see it's nice and fast. No matter how I'm swiping across the display, things are nice and smooth. That's what you expect from iOS. But you won't benefit from things such as Pro Motion unless you have the Pro models, and you won't be able to play some of the newer top-tier AAA games. So Apple recently showed off different games that this can play, such as Resident Evil 4, where you have that option now. So if we go down, you can go into Resident Evil 4, play a full-fledged AAA game here, and there'll be more to come with that. So it's not as great, of course, as if you had a gaming PC, but it's something you can't do on the non-Pro phones. So with the latest processor, it does that and really helps with the camera as well, which we'll test in a little bit. As far as the overall speed of them, well, I did want to show a couple different things. The first thing I wanted to do is let's go to the second page again here. Now, I did want to run a couple tests to show the speed of the overall processors the best I can. It's hard to actually convey this, but I thought we'd load maybe Minecraft, which is one of my family favorites. I have them on every device, and also the latest versions, and all apps are closed on all devices here. So as you can see here, well, let's close this, close that one. All apps are closed on all the different devices, just to verify that they're all going to sort of clear out the memory, and then we can start over. So we'll open Minecraft on all of them. It's the latest version, like I mentioned, and let's see how quickly they load. Of course, I can't open them all at the exact same time, but this gives you an idea. The fastest processors are on the far right. Then the next ones are basically this section with the 14 and 15. And then, of course, the 13 and the SE. So we'll tap continue on the SE here. Tap continue here. Give it just a moment to load. And we'll tap play on all of them. So we're all at the same screen. Let's tap play. We'll just go back and forth in order. We'll go to create new. Do that again here, and then we'll create new world. And we'll see again how quickly this takes. Sometimes you have to go through a bunch of different menus here. And now let's go ahead and tap create. So we'll tap create, create. There we go. We have to select on some of them. But again, I installed the same version on all of them. You'll see there, and everything's loading. This phone keeps bringing up Apple Wallet. I've tried to clear everything away from it, but it still comes up once in a while on the 14 Plus. But you'll see the overall speed at which it's loading. We'll just move those away. And we're in pretty quickly on all of them. The frame rates should be good on all of them. And like I said, they're all updated to the latest version as best I could, and they're all quite playable without an issue. Another way we can test speed is actually exporting a 4K video. As you can see, I have the same video loaded on all of them, and I have all other apps closed. We'll go ahead and go back into iMovie here. They're updated to the latest version, and if we scroll all the way to the end, this is actually a 4-minute and 36-second video that I've recorded from different iPhone footage over the years and just sort of stitched together for this video. So let's go ahead and see how quickly we can export all of it. I'll bring in a stopwatch here so that we can measure the actual time. All of them are ready to go as far as exporting the video. I'll tap Save Video, and then we'll start the stopwatch. So we'll tap Save Video on all of these. There we go, and we'll tap Start, and let's see how long it takes to export all of them. They should be pretty close, and some may be closer than you would think. All of them basically exported in what we expected. The 15 Pro and Pro Max with the A17 Pro and the extra 2 gigs of RAM, since they're 8 gigs of RAM, actually seemed to be a little bit faster. But everything with the A16 Bionic was very close. However, it was a little surprising with the 15 and 15 Plus being a little slower than the 14 or 14 Plus, and the SE came in last, as you would expect. Let's go ahead and close this out here. When it comes to the forward-facing cameras, most of these are very similar. All of the iPhone 14 and 15 models have the exact same forward-facing cameras, all with autofocus, and the only difference is really the processors that are processing the image. The iPhone SE can only record in 1080p with the forward-facing camera, and the iPhone 13 doesn't seem to have the autofocus, so it's just not as good as the other models. When it comes to the rear cameras, there's a very big difference, and we'll compare them in a moment. With the iPhone SE, of course, we only have one rear camera. The iPhone 13 adds an additional ultra-wide camera. With the iPhone 14 and 14 Plus, of course, we have similar rear cameras as well. But once we get to the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus, we actually gain larger sensors. So we have 48 megapixel cameras as well as an ultra-wide on those. And then with the 15 Pro and Pro Max, of course, that's where the greatest advantage is, especially with the iPhone 15 Pro Max, where we have a tetraprism 5x telephoto zoom lens. So that's a big step up from all of them as far as zoom goes. However, you can digitally zoom in on all of them to sort of match what you get with that, but it's not quite the exact same. Also, one other big thing you get with the Pro phones this year is not just ProRes video and photos, but you've also got a macro mode that you've had before, but we also have ProRes log. If we go into our camera settings here, scroll down, we go into our formats, you'll see that we have Pro RAW and resolution control. Again, we have different options for ProRes. We have ProRes encoding, and we also have log footage, so we can color grade this afterwards. We also have the option for spatial video with Apple Vision Pro, where you can record information using the depth information off the cameras, and the same is true also with photos. When you're taking a photo with the 15 Pro or Pro Max, they're actually sensing depth information even without taking a portrait, so some great upgrades there. If we go into video, again, you'll see the option for ProRes. You can also record to an external drive this time around. So if you want to record 4K 60 to an external drive, you can do that. We'll switch to ProRes. Gives you a second there, and you'll see it says USB-C. So we can record directly to an external drive for extra storage or just to offload that footage a little bit faster. So it's great to have all of those options, but let's see what they look like in the real world. I compared all of the cameras, forward-facing and rear cameras in different situations. Let's go ahead and take a look at those now. These are the forward-facing cameras from the iPhone SE, the iPhone 13, the iPhone 14 and 14 Plus, the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus, and the iPhone 15 Pro and iPhone 15 Pro Max. It gives you an idea of what they look like across all of them and how they sound from the SE to the 13 to the 14, 15, and 15 Pro series. Let me know which one you think looks best and sounds best in the comments below. When it comes to the battery life, of course, that's a huge consideration for many people, and something they've upgraded with the iPhone 15 models is this year they've added the actual charge cycle count directly into your settings. I'm not sure why they haven't brought it to other phones, but if you go to General, then About, at the very bottom, you'll see cycle count. That just shows you when it was actually cycled every time when you're using it to charge and then discharge. And basically, Apple says after 500 cycles, you should be around 80% battery health. Something else they've added in the 15 models that none of the others have is under battery health and charging, you have the option for charging optimization at 80%. While this is something that I personally won't be using, many people like the option as they're going to keep the phone for many years. However, you can swap the battery and just bump it back up to that 100% battery health. But the option is there in the 15 models if you want it. As far as overall battery life, well, if you take a look at different videos online that have compared them, and just through my use altogether of all the different phones over the years, we've got a general idea of what you can expect depending on use. With the iPhone SE, you can expect about 4 to 5 hours. With the iPhone 13, about 6.5 to 7.5 hours. With the iPhone 14, about 7 hours or so. iPhone 14 Plus, 9.5 to 10 hours. The iPhone 15, about the same 9.5 to 10 hours in basic tests. You may get a little less depending on how you use it. With the iPhone 15 Plus, in tests online, it gets the best battery life, and that's what Apple actually touts, 12 to 13.5 hours depending on who you ask. The iPhone 15 Pro about 9.5 hours, and the iPhone 15 Pro Max about 11 to 12 hours, depending on how you're using it. If you're a heavy gamer, that won't be the case, but typically for me, the way I'm using it, it gets me through the day without a problem, and typically I'll get about probably 9 or so hours. And again, it just depends on how you're using it, whether you're running betas or anything else. But you'll see yesterday, take a look at maybe the best day here, I've only used, well, about 40% of my battery, give or take, and I've used it for 3 hours and 9 minutes. Typically, I'll get through the day and have about 40% left. So in general, it seems to get through the day no problem. The overall battery graph needs to be improved with actual accuracy, as it doesn't seem to be that great, and also counts standby hours as far as battery life. But in general, they're all great. The best one definitely seems to be the 14 Plus and the 15 Plus. Both of them are quite good with battery, probably due to the lack of always-on display and the 120 Hz ProMotion. Now, when it comes to the speakers, they're all pretty much the same. However, with the 15 series, they seem to be a little bit better to me. They have great stereo sound. You can hear it very well. They go up to about 80 to 85 decibels, and they just sound great overall. Some people have complained with the top speaker giving them an issue. I personally haven't had this, but in general, they're quite good, especially with the 14 and 15 models. If you go back to the iPhone SE, it definitely isn't as good, but it should be good for most people. But if you want the best, I would go with the Pro models, as they definitely have sort of a more spatial sound to them. When it comes to overall reception, well, they seem to be pretty good overall. They're all 5G modems. All of them have 5G, but the iPhone SE does not have millimeter wave. So millimeter wave antennas are not built in, probably due to room. And of course, you don't have SIM card trays in the 15 Pro and Pro Max, as the newer phones in the US don't, as I mentioned earlier. but overall reception should be good. But in the 15 series phones, it's even better as they've upgraded the modem. So you have faster speed, better connectivity, Wi-Fi 6E, so it's super fast as far as that goes with no issues whatsoever. I've had pretty good Bluetooth connectivity as well. So the very best would be the 15 series, of course, as it has the latest technology. Also from the iPhone 14 and 15 models, we have SOS via satellite. So that's a mode that you definitely want to consider if it matters to you, where we have emergency SOS. This allows you to gain connectivity if you don't have Wi-Fi or cellular access. You can then connect with Apple, roadside assistance, depending on your country. It's coming to more countries soon, but allows you to actually have it call after a severe crash and more. I've experienced this in real life where it actually triggered after a crash on the watch and also the phone. I stopped it, thankfully, because everyone was okay, but it's nice to have it there. It sensed that and then was going to call for help if I didn't respond. So that's definitely something that's great, and it's in the 14 to the 15 models. So definitely something to consider there. When it comes to the IP rating, well, the iPhone SE is the only one that doesn't have the same rating as the others. It has IP67 with 1 meter for 30 minutes. All of the others have IP68 with 6 meters for 30 minutes. So they're all water sealed, but they are not waterproof. Apple will not cover water damage if they get damaged in water. I've experienced this myself. If it's within water and there's water intrusion, you'll have to use Apple Care, or you'll have to cover it yourself if it's out of warranty. So I would not just jump in water or just go swimming with this without a waterproof case. It should resist it, but is not technically waterproof enough to actually just go swimming with and forget about it. So that's something to consider, as many people think you can just jump in a pool with it and not have to think about it. Apple will not cover that, so that's something to consider. Now, as far as which one you should choose, well, that really depends on what you're looking for. If you don't care about anything really as far as the top of the line, some of the best as far as battery would be the 15 Plus, the 14 Plus. But if you're looking for something that's just an LCD, something very simple and small, there's no mini anymore, of course we have the iPhone SE. It's the least expensive, still has Touch ID, and is a great thing to use if that's something you want. It's easy on the eyes, but just doesn't have the best battery life. I probably personally would not opt for the iPhone 13 or 14 series. I would try and get the 15, as typically you'll see the 15 and 15 Plus on discount very often. So that's something I would opt for if I had the option to go for whatever I want. However, none of them are bad options. They'll all be supported with iOS 17, iOS 18, well into the future for many years typically. At least 5 years for each model, so that gives the iPhone SE a couple more years left before it's replaced. So all of them are a good buy, and hopefully this helped you decide which one would be best for you. If you've picked up an iPhone, or you're thinking of picking up an iPhone, or you currently have one, I'd love to hear what you have in the comments below or what you're getting. If you'd like to get your hands on this wallpaper, I'll link it in the description like I normally do. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.